Caligula's Horse, one of the most underrated and hardest working prog metal bands in Australia, if not the world. I discovered Caligula's Horse while I was searching for new Australian bands to listen to in the mid to late 2010s. Marigold was the first song I heard from the group, digging it pretty much immediately. However, I bounced off a lot of their other material. My musical taste hadn't matured enough. Fast forward a year or two and I gave them another shot. By this time, In Contact had come out. Dream the Dead pretty much sealed the deal for my future love of Seahorse's music. After hearing more tracks including Rust and Songs for No One, I started listening to more and more of their catalogue around the house, with my wife eventually hearing Rust and falling in love as well. We've seen the band quite a few times live now, even travelling to Brisbane to catch their live after lockdown show after sorely missing live music for 2 years due to the spicy cough. Caligula's Horse put on one hell of a live show, with Jim Gray easily being the most charismatic and funny prog metal frontman in Australia. Jim Gray is one of Australia's best prog metal vocalists, a close second to Ian Kenny in my opinion. What's your favourite Caligula's Horse album? Let me know down below. With all that said, stay a while as I dive into the history of the band and their incredible catalogue of prog metal offerings. Caligula's Horse formed in early 2011 by Jim Gray and Sam Vallen. Sam came up with the name while studying ancient history and classical languages at university. Incitatus was the favourite horse of the Roman Emperor Caligula. According to legend, Caligula planned to make the horse a consul, although ancient sources can confirm this did not occur. Other stories indicate the horse had 18 servants for himself, lived in a marble stable, walked in a harness decorated with rare and special stones and jewels, dressed in purple, which was the colour of royalty, and ate from an ivory manger. Scholars suggest that the treatment of the horse by Caligula was an elaborate prank intended to ridicule and provoke the Senate, rather than a sign of insanity, or was perhaps a form of satire with the implication that a horse could perform a senator's duties. Jim's vocals are quite unique, as he was a choir boy growing up despite not being religious after receiving a scholarship to a fancy school. His inspiration came from vocalists like Devon Townsend, Darrow from Fair to Midland, and Mark Seymour of Hunters and Collectors. Jim also takes inspiration from female artists too, including Tori Amos and Imogen Heap. Sam is inspired by guitarists such as Alan Holdsworth, Pliny, Guthrie Govan, and Steve Vai. Sam had asked Jim to come and join him as a guest vocalist on an album's worth of original material that Sam had been working on as a side project. Jim notes that the pair definitely had a natural chemistry in the studio, which led to excitement about the new project. Once the pair had written the song The City Has No Empathy, they knew they were onto something, but still never imagined Caligula's Horse would be anything more than a one-off studio project. The pair then looked to round out the band so they could play live shows, welcoming Zach Greensill on guitar, David Cooper on bass, and Jeff Irish on drums. They were happy to be proven wrong, however, as the album Moments from Ephemeral City released on the 2nd of April 2011 and was well received all around the world in the prog music scene. The album was recorded in makeshift studios around the Gold Coast and Brisbane, with Sam taking on the production, mixing, mastering and engineering. The City Has No Empathy is my favourite song off the album, with some blistering lead work from Sam, masterfully mixing in heavy chug riffs with elegant clean playing. With their first album under their belts, they headed off on tour through 2011 and 2012. By mid-2012, the band were ready to put out new music and entered the studio to commence their follow-up LP. The progress of the album was documented in a series of video diaries that were uploaded to YouTube throughout the recording process between April of 2012 and March of 2013. The videos feature various clips of the band writing, rehearsing, travelling, attending photo shoots, and performing live. In September of 2013, it was announced that the band had signed with Welkin Entertainment. The Tide, The Thief and River's End was released on the 13th of October 2013 through Welkin Records. The album was recorded at Heaven's Gate Studio in Brisbane by Sam, Zach and Dale Prince, who would later join the band on bass duties. This is a concept album with each track listed in a chronological order to tell a story that refers to the uprising of rebels, called The Tide, within the city of River's End, and a journey of oppressed people finding a safe haven that has unfortunate similarities between the old and new city. The Thief is the only character who remains in the story from start to finish. Dark Hair Down is my favourite song off the album, with gent-leaning staccato riffs, with the whole album generally heading in a heavier direction. Fans on Reddit mention how the album is epic, melodic, technical, with hooks galore. The two standouts of the album are Sam Vallen and Jim Gray. Vallen's playing is equal parts technical and tasteful. He can shred but never overdoes it. It always fits perfectly within the context of the song. I couldn't agree with this more. Seahorse undertook an intense touring schedule within Australia in support of the album and became known for their energetic live show and stage presence. The band played Progfest Sydney 2013 and Progfest Melbourne 2014. They toured with bands including Opeth, Mastodon, The Dillinger Escape Plan, Protest the Hero, The Ocean, Firewind, 12 Foot Ninja and Knee Obliviscaris. an incredible amount of heavy music royalty. After the release of their sophomore album, the band were gaining industry recognition, with Inside Out Music taking a particular interest in the band, signing them onto their roster with a worldwide deal soon after, to release their third album through them. Prior to the release of the album, the band toured around Australia with Tesseract and played a mix of crowd favourites and yet-to-be-released songs. The upcoming album was recorded at Lunar Audio Studios on the Gold Coast alongside Sam Vallen's personal studio, mixed by Brandon Anthony at Heaven's Gate Studios in Brisbane, then mastered by the legendary Jens Bogren. The album was produced by Sam. It is the last to feature rhythm guitarist Zach Greensill and drummer Jeff Irish. Prior to the release, Jim had the following to say: "Bloom is very special to all of us. It's an album full of colour and life, vibrancy and energy, but one that breathes in and out with a natural ebb and flow. It's exactly what we hope to achieve with Caligula's Horse. To us, this album has a life of its own." First single off the album, Marigold, was released in September, with second single Firelight releasing in the first half of October, with the last single, Turntail, releasing in March of 2016. Bloom was released on the 16th of October 2015, and in its debut week on the ARIA charts, it had reached number 16 on the Australian Bands chart and 75 on the overall chart. It peaked at 73 on the iTunes Australian charts in its first week. Critics heaped praise onto the album, scoring a large number of 8s, 9s and 10s. Bloom is in my top 2 favourite albums from the band, with the only song I'm not fond of being Dragonfly. Every other track is a masterpiece from start to finish, featuring the greatest 1-2 song combo of Bloom into Marigold, with Bloom building like all good prog songs do before leading perfectly into the riff-heavy and groovy Marigold. Let me know down below in the comments if there are any other songs that lead perfectly into one another. It doesn't have to be Caligula's Horse. With the album released, the band set off on their first European tour with Shining in October and November of 2015. Sam Vallen and Zach Greensill were nominated on Total Guitar Readers' Poll for the Best Prog Rock Guitarist of 2015. This is definitely a worthy nomination. Sam Vallen is an incredible and highly underrated player. On the 30th of May 2016, it was announced that Jeff Irish had left the band. On the 10th of August 2016, Josh Griffin was announced as Irish's replacement. On the 28th of January 2017, rhythm guitarist Zach Greensill announced his departure to focus on his side project, Opus of a Machine. Zach was replaced by Adrian Golby, who had played bass in Arcane, Jim Gray's first band. On the 4th of August 2017, the song Will's Song, Let the Colours Run, was released along with its music video on the 23rd of August as a tease to the new album. If I remember correctly, the song was named after Will Hunter, tour manager for the band. Jim had the following to say about the song: "Will's song fits into the first chapter of the album, To the Wind. This chapter is centered around an old painter, an alcoholic who relies on his addiction to work. This track is very much about his own self-destructive tendencies and how they're tied into his drive to throw sobriety away and continue his legacy. It's a piece about internal struggle, his desire to prove to the younger generation that he influenced, that he is that young man still. The inspiration for this character came from a number of places, but a big part of it was that Sam and I wanted to address the bizarre social obsession with the idea of the struggling artist, as though an addiction or mental illness of some sort is somehow preferable as long as they keep producing art. It's a bit of a disgusting idea, only seeing the artist as the commodity they create, rather than as the human being they are." On the 15th of September 2017, the band released In Contact through Inside Out Music, the first album to feature Adrian Golby and Josh Griffin. With the album recorded at Studio Circuit in Sam Vallen's house, this would be the last album to feature bassist Dave Cooper. The album landed at number 50 on the ARIA charts. Jim had the following to say about the album: "In Contact is a concept album, but we wanted to break from the idea of a direct narrative in order to discuss the overarching themes of reach, interconnectedness, and the nature of inspiration. The album is divided into 4 separate chapters, each telling the story of an individual artist as they reach for something more in their lives. In Contact received positive reviews from music critics, including the hard-to-please Angry Metal Guy. As I mentioned before, it's so hard to pick a favourite between Bloom and In Contact. The only low point on the album, in my opinion, is Love Conquers All, taking just a bit too long before getting to the rest of the band, and then it's over. The rest of the songs on offer, though, are fantastic and some of the band's best. Dream the Dead is an incredible opener, highlighting what's to come with intricate leads, some softer moments, building to some crushing chug riffs like all good prog metal that's come before it. The album contains spoken word poetry with Inertia and The Weapon on the Wall, a first for the band, which I love seeing performed live because it's such a perfect fit for the band before launching into the pummeling, drumming and heavy riffs of Cannon's Mouth. In Contact also contains fan favourite Graves, the band's longest song at 15.5 minutes. On the 10th of December 2018, Dave Cooper announced his departure from the band, mainly for health and financial reasons as well as other musical aspirations. On the 5th of March 2019, Dale Prince was announced as the new bassist. Dale was already known for having formerly been called Seahorse's sixth member, helping the boys with the mixing and production of their albums and for previously playing bass in Opus of a Machine. Dale is a great fit for the band, sharing the same sense of humour, also being the fastest in the band to take off his seatbelt on a plane. If you follow them on social media, you know what I'm talking about. In September of 2019, the band toured the Americas. On the 22nd of May 2020, the band released their fifth album, Rise Radiant. This was preceded by the release of 3 singles from the album, The Tempest, Slow Violence, and Valkyrie. The album was recorded between Studio Circuit and Machine Lab Recording in Queensland and produced by Sam again. This is the first album to feature Dale Prince on bass and is the current lineup that we know today. Rise Radiant peaked at number 23 on the ARIA charts, the band's highest charting album today, landing in other top 100 charts around the world. The album launched with 8 original tracks and 2 covers, which were Don't Give Up by Peter Gabriel and Message to My Girl by Split Enz. This is another very solid album where I've got nothing bad to say. Resonate is the softest song and a welcome breather after the intensity of The Tempest, Slow Violence, and Salt. The Ascent is one of the highlight tracks, ebbing and flowing over its near 11-minute runtime, a song of inspiration and hope to keep fighting, culminating with heavy gent riffs again. The pandemic put a bit of a dampener on the entire release, with the band not being able to tour to support it until years later. On the 20th of June 2021, Seahorse held their first ever livestream event, Live After Lockdown, at the Triffid in Brisbane. My wife and I were there at that show, flying from Sydney to Brisbane after being starved of live music for almost 2 years. This was our first time seeing the band live. They were incredible. I did hear though that the live stream was plagued with issues, which is unfortunate. The show was so good, we even purchased a live stream ticket and watched it again when we got home to relive it the next day. On the 6th of July 2021, Adrian Golby left the band, citing a will to journey to the next stage of his experience of life. The band thanked him for his contributions, advising they would not be looking for another guitarist for the time, with the band remaining a 4-piece. They have not found another guitarist to date, with backing tracks used for the guitar sections that Sam doesn't play live. Adrian has gone on to become a videographer. I didn't know this until my wife and I caught Caligula's horse and the Butterfly Effect at the Roundhouse. After the show, I was waiting for my wife to meet the Butterfly Effect and get a photo with the band. The videographer of the Butterfly Effect, who I later found out to be Adrian, saw me with the Caligula's horse shirt on and started talking to me. We talked about the show, where I was from, and why I travelled to Sydney, as there are very few shows on the south coast. He asked me if I'd seen Caligula's horse before. I thanked him for the chat. I couldn't shake the feeling though that he looked incredibly familiar. After my wife finished what she was doing, I said to her, "I'm pretty sure that was Adrian." Sure enough, it was after a quick Google search. My wife later found him on Insta and messaged him. He was glad that I and many others didn't recognise him at the show, putting his previous history behind him and wanting to focus on his current passions. I felt like less of an idiot for not recognising him afterwards, because that's the way he wanted it. In April and May of 2022, Zach returned to the band as a guest musician during their Australian tour in support of Rise Radiant, which had been postponed until 2022 due to the pandemic. On September 8th of 2022, Sam put out a solo instrumental single titled Flicker, sounding very similar in style to early Caligula's Horse. On the 10th of November 2023, the band released their first single titled Golem and announced that their 6th studio album, Charcoal Grace, would be released on the 26th of January 2024. On the 7th of December 2023, the band released the second single off the upcoming album, The World Breathes With Me. On the 11th of January 2024, 2 weeks before the album release, the band premiered the third single, The Storm Chaser, along with the music video. Charcoal Grace releases as planned on the 26th of January 2024 through Inside Out Music, produced by Sam, who has produced every single release to date. Critics were fond of the album, with Distorted Sound scoring a perfect 10 and Metal Storm scoring an 8.2 out of 10. This is yet again another incredibly solid prog metal album. However, after repeated listens, it falls short of the heights of Bloom and In Contact. There is no bad or out of place song to be found here though, with my highlights being The World Breathes With Me, Charcoal Grace Part 4, Give Me Hell, and The Storm Chaser. The band have been touring in support of the album across Australia, the Americas, and Europe ever since. Prog metal nerds absolutely love Caligula's Horse. All you have to do is take a look at the prog metal subreddit. So many people were posting about their live shows, a lot of people thought it was paid propaganda. Here's what some people around the internet have to say about Caligula's Horse. It makes me happy to see this band getting so much attention on here lately. I hope they continue to grow in popularity so we get more North American tours. I agree with those who say to start with Bloom or maybe Rise Radiant. These albums have songs that can grab you pretty quickly. Graves is the obvious pick and easily one of their best tracks, but beyond that, Turntail is underrated as hell and a very affirming and powerful song. A few other favourites beyond the tracks you picked are Dream the Dead, Don't Give Up, The Storm Chaser, the list goes on. Another user says, Songs for No One turned me onto them. I was most disappointed when they didn't play it live. I have had Dream the Dead stuck in my head the last 5 months, got some reason, and still can't get enough of it. So, what do I think? Caligula's Horse have consistently put out top-tier progressive metal for the last decade and a half with no signs of slowing down. Sam Vallen writes some of the most tasteful lead guitar in all of prog metal, very technical, but it always makes sense in the context of the song, where it never devolves into fretboard wankery. Jim Gray's falsetto vocals are pretty much unmatched in the prog metal scene. He's also got the best live banter I've ever seen. Dale and Josh also have commendable bass and drum work to round out the sound. It is an absolute shame that they aren't bigger than what they are. It's never easy to break out of Australia given our geographical location and exorbitant costs to travel. Prog metal and alternative music in general just isn't that popular over here, sadly. The pandemic also didn't help as it killed a lot of the momentum of Rise Radiant. I sincerely hope Caligula's Horse get the recognition they deserve one day. Thanks for watching.